I actually just, I don't post on Facebook a lot, but I posted this very recently because I thought it was an important message. And it has to do with kind of sociopath, uh, and like the concept of mental health in the role of like a lot of the mass gun violence that's been going on. Um, because people who have antisocial or sociopath personality traits, even us as a field in psychiatry, we don't really understand it like that well. Um, we use that to describe people who tend to do a lot of criminal activity, and that is their way to like go through the world. Like this is how they get what they want. They will do things to lie, intimidate, disregard for really other people's property and rights just to get what they want. And that's the main similarity, right? But it's not like a thing that we know how to treat. Like we don't have a medicine for it. We don't have like some sort of therapy even for it, because those people don't come to therapy. Nothing's wrong with me, right? This is how I get my way in the world, right? It's not like somebody with narcissism who deep down they know that there's something going on with them, right? A lot of people who are sociopathic, they just believe their way is the high, is their way or the highway, right? So we don't even get those people really come to us in therapy a whole lot. So
yeah, I mean, does it happen like post like whatever occurrence, like after maybe
Trauma.
surviving a
yeah,
lot, I mean, then being locked up, and then the state coming in and
right.
helping them after they're incarcerated or whatever after.
It's hard to say because there's people who get locked up and they learned their lesson, whatever, they made a mistake, and there's people who have lifelong persistence in this. We don't really know. Like there are risk factors as far as like that are associated with it. A lot of time, coming from poorer families and a lot of times single parent families um, tend to give rise, but it doesn't mean that that's what causes it. It's just what we find is associated with it, but it doesn't mean that's what causes it. So we still don't really understand it very well. And you know, it, it's it's almost like a thing we say just to put a label on people who commit a lot of crimes,
Yeah.
and it's important to distinguish that because it's not really like a illness in the traditional sense. Like, for example, depression, you're ill and your brain has chemical changes and you can't really control how you feel. Well, people who are sociopathic, they're definitely in control of what they do. They just choose to do these things, right? And so I make that distinction because, I've had times where people will be like, hey, well, you can't blame me for my actions because I technically have this disorder. Well, that, you can't use that to alleviate somebody's responsibility when they do a crime.
Mm.
Now,
Is
if
that
they're
what's
having like
going
a
on?
psychotic episode where they can't tell truth from reality, that is a valid reason to exonerate somebody from a crime. They weren't even, their brain wasn't even functioning then, right? But you can't really say that about people who are sociopathic. So, there's
Even that's kind of a slippery road as well, right? Like, how do you
yeah.
know if somebody? How do you accurately measure if somebody is in psychosis? Like, is that a pretty straight line thing that is?
Well, you could see it. Like you could actually examine somebody and monitor their behavior, and you can see it. Like,
but if they're manipulative and a good actor or something, you know what I mean? Like,
okay, sure, yeah, but that's something I get a lot too. People who fake symptoms because they need something from the hospital. Like they don't want to sleep in the streets, so they want like extra days in the hospital, so they fake. But it's easy to tell after a while. It's very hard to fake it for like many days in a row. But you're right. We don't have a great way to stop somebody from like getting in for at least like a day or two. We are on the side of safety anyways. But going back to my point, which is like mass shootings, people be talking about like, well, we need more mental health, right? Which is fair. Like, I don't disagree with it. I'm always for more mental health, but I don't really agree with the notion that this is something that mental health providers can solve in a very efficient or quick way. Because the whole notion that like mass shooters have a mental illness, it's actually never really been, it's not really well proven either, you know. I see hundreds and hundreds of people with serious mental illness. Okay. Like I see dozens every day. And in my career, I've probably seen thousands. And I can tell you that not a single one has ever committed a mass gun violence. Okay. So the whole notion that people who have mental illness are dangerous, that they're violent, that they're like ticking time bombs, this is actually a really false and bad stereotype. And a lot of movies and media propagate this, right? People who are mentally ill are way more likely to hurt themselves in some way than to really hurt other people. And sure, if they're like really unstable, they could have like some propensity for like uncontrolled, like they don't know who they're talking to and what they're doing. But it's very difficult for me to imagine somebody who has a really sick, like disorganized brain to be able to coordinate and plan a mass attack, right? I see people who are psychotic tend to have trouble even caring for basic needs, like showering, you know, or like memory and stuff like that. So we're essentially
That's kind of scary, right?
Yeah, right.
That's kind of scary. We don't really have it pinned, and like, how do we? I mean, obviously, we're trying to prevent this at any cost,
Yeah.
you know. And a lot of people are
Right.
going against guns, and some people are saying, "Oh,
Right.
mental illness," and
Right.
you know, all the different reasons.
Yeah. So my point is just mental illness is always good, but that's not the solution. That's not the only solution to this. There is no mass shooter disorder that exists. There is no, you know, stop mass shooting pill. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like there is no therapy designed for that, because less than a fraction of a percent of mentally ill people ever do it, which is the same as general population. So there's nothing to differentiate statistically, right? Of all the mass shooters, I think they did a study, about 25% of them exhibited mental illness. Well, if you look at the national survey NIMH did in 2020, like 21% of all US Americans have some type of mental illness or mental health problem, whatever you want to call it, of various severity. So it doesn't differentiate. You know, so the whole notion that just because like they did this and, you know, quote unquote, like no sane person would do this, right? Intuitively, you think they must have a mental illness, but we really don't have the science to back that up. And like, what can we do about it? I don't know. You know, like I wouldn't know what to do, honestly, if somebody came to me and was like, hey, this person might shoot up something, right? Because it's not a symptom. Like an act of gun violence is not a symptom that we know that has like a progression and a severity and a timing. It's an event. And like nobody can predict the future, you know what I mean? So all we can do is try to lower their risk factor. And so intuitively, yeah, if I help somebody with their trauma and depression, maybe that'll decrease the risk of them doing something like that. We say that intuitively, but because it happens so rarely, we don't have the data to actually back it up. Like, you know, I don't have any scientific evidence to do any of that. So that was just a point I wanted to say about.
Yeah, would your intuition say? I mean, I didn't do any studying. Just all so many people around me are talking about it. I kind of just take it as is and try not to fall into any false narrative about it. Would you say that having an outlet or an escape, like breaking, an artistic expression, would lower the chances of somebody disregarding? You couldn't even say that?
I can't even say that because it's multifactorial. You know, like somebody planning something like a mass violence with a gun, you know, it's too complex of an event, I think, to just say there's one reason for it. Because it's not just, even if there is a mental issue, it's probably not just that. There's also like cultural, political, social reasons why, you know. Somebody motivated by an ideology, you know, or being in an echo chamber where everybody shares this ideology and being in that for years and having a certain outlook on like the racial dynamics or political dynamics in this country, like this is learned behavior through possibly years of just entrenchment in these beliefs that are backed by other people who share that. It's a culture, right? And so like,
yeah, that's not even 100. That's not even 100%. We don't even know if that is a factor, right?
Exactly.
But it could be.
It could be.
And
right?
there's too many.
So that's an example of what.
Yeah.
That's an example of what a mechanism for something like that could be. That, like, I can't change, you know. Even if they came to see me, you know. And we're also very limited, you know. Like I'm limited by what my patients choose to share with me. Also, so we don't even have a great way to detect these things, you know. It's very easy for somebody, even if they have like even 100 people with like multiple red flags, it's extremely hard to predict who's actually going to do what. And out of all those people, if they just refuse to really share anything with me, I can't read anybody's mind either. There's nothing. So I've been recently finding it important to share that with people in general, because I think there is a bit of a narrative that like, hey, just leave it all to mental health. But I think there's a lot of more. There's more to that. And, you know, sorry for expressing maybe certain views that people might consider political, but
no, I'm trying to absorb it too. It's a lot to take in. You know, this happened a couple of weeks ago now, I believe. And
yeah, like some states, they have a red flag law where like if a mental health professional notifies the authority that this person is high risk, like they said something or they behaved in a certain way, they could go and temporarily remove firearms from that person or prevent access. You know, at least for a temporary time. But like a lot of states don't have that policy. Like Texas, we don't have that here.
Oh yeah, I wouldn't imagine.
Sorry about the mic. It's too vast too, like you said. It's too vast. Yeah. And usually, like again, it's like there's a lot of factors. Like even just like like we're really going deep into this, but like just even being a minority and seeking therapy as a minority is even rough. To just open yourself up and being whatever that's like culturally like. There's no such thing as mental health. Some cultures are like, whatever, just walk it off, like, or something, right? Like, so that alone is like even hard.
Yo, Zeshen, thank you for sharing that right there, man. That's definitely something that's prevalent right now. That's good insight on that. I never even thought of thinking about it that way.